Warning, the following broadcast may contain hot takes and unpopular opinions made by a bunch of film nerds. Be aware of potential spoilers ahead. And with that said, welcome to the round table.
All right, welcome to the first episode of Reels of the Round Table, a Wildcat Film Club production, where the hardest choices require the strongest wills. So,
Indeed they do.
With that being said, my name is Jacob Cowan, president here at Wildcat Film Club. Joined with me are my co-hosts.
My name's Peter. I am the vice president, and my job is just to, oversee everything, make sure everything's running smoothly.
My name is Nolan Roussel. I'm the treasurer here at Wildcat Film Club, and my job is to ensure we have a budget and keep having a budget.
My name is Armand Sinha. I am the script manager and entertainment acting within the club.
My name is Alex Grubel. I am the public relations manager, and my job is to promote the club on social media and with other uses.
I'm Thea. I'm the secretary, and I write.
There you go.
She writes. All right. We also have one additional host. His name is also Nolan. Nolan is our tech lead. He's unable to make it today, but he will hopefully be here for future episodes. So, yes, welcome. What we do here is we talk about films, which is very broad. So let me break it down for you. What we're going to do is we're going to have a lot of fun and wonderful debates, as well as discussions about film-related news and announcements. For instance, today we are planning on talking about something about Marvel that Peter has brought up for us.
Indeed.
And then we will also be having a bunch of great film-related games and activities, as well as announcements about our own clubs, projects, and interviews with our own actors and crew members. Unfortunately, today we don't have any interviews or activities planned because this is our first episode. So it's kind of just more introductory and film-related topics. With that being said, anybody got any film news they would like to bring up?
I read somewhere this week that the FNAF movie's predicted box office income for this weekend is predicted to drop by 78%.
Wow.
That's a very specific amount.
That is
A big drop.
it was a movie. It was quite a movie.
Yeah, it was quite the movie.
Has everybody here seen it?
I have not seen it.
I
have
did.
seen it.
You haven't
You
seen
haven't.
it.
So we can't talk too much about it since you haven't seen it, but
What did you think of it?
I thought it was a movie that clearly would rack in a lot of money because of popularity with the FNAF name, and also not do that well after that because people would actually see what the movie is and then be like, oh, this just took FNAF's name and then made a movie just using the name
Yeah.
and nothing else.
I also watched it. It was very interesting because from the standpoint of cinematography, like the lighting was very inconsistent. The shots, like some of them seemed useless.
shots.
Some of the shots seemed like just kind of useless almost, just to show like this character is talking. That's it. There's no extra motivation behind the shots. So as you said, basic.
The actors felt very inexperienced, or not inexperienced. Not inexperienced.
Well, not the lead at least, because he was in like the Hunger Games.
Okay, sorry, not
movies.
inexperienced, but not. I felt like their acting was very fake at times.
One-dimensional %?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It felt very just like unnatural and just forced. And I was like, there was a lot of times where I was like, this is just obvious. It like really made me think, oh, this is a movie, because they just were so like animated in the way they acted, and it felt very unnatural.
I will say, I think Matthew Lillard's casting was pretty strong. Probably the best of the movie. Getting to see someone kind of play around a lot more with even within one role, getting different tones out of different scenes, and there was a decent amount of variety there, and he generally, I think, succeeded with it. Was for me the highlight of the movie, and I think that people going in looking for a strong performance out of him will be satisfied.
I saw when I saw it, there were definitely there were times that the acting definitely didn't feel very fulfilling, but at the same time I felt like it was a very difficult story to make a movie about that would appeal to everyone, because you have a lot of the people who enjoyed the franchise when it was first came out, a lot of the new people who just came in, as well as people who know nothing about it. So to make a movie that satisfies all three of those major groups would be very difficult. So it really ruined the script, because you couldn't have too many references to one thing or another while also not explaining everything. And that just kind of really bogged it down in some ways.
That was an issue I had watching this movie, because for context, I didn't go watch it in the movie theater. I watched it via Peacock on my laptop. And as someone who hasn't watched who hasn't played any of the FNAF games and has almost no knowledge of the lore, I found it difficult to understand not just the lore, but also any potential big hints.
There were a lot of Easter eggs and references that I felt were just kind of plopped in there for people to be like, oh, look at that. That's a reference, not really doing much else. I mean, I enjoyed the movie overall. And yeah, it's hard to balance. I mean, a plot-heavy game and make a movie out of it. The game just has so much lore behind it, and the lore isn't always connected to
and the lore itself
story.
is inconsistent.
Yeah, there's a lot to it.
And that's what I find really difficult about adapting games into movies. You'll see this with a lot of other I wouldn't say all video game based movies. Obviously you got Super Mario Bros, you got the 2 Sonic movies. Those did pretty well, all things considered. But then you have
Mortal
Kombat films, Five Nights at Freddy's, also Uncharted, or the Assassin's Creed movie that came out 2016. Those are kind of hard. That's kind of hard to do, because you'll have, obviously we said earlier, you have the people that I don't know, Amon, you've played the Five Nights at Freddy games?
I haven't played them myself, but I've seen a lot of. I used to watch a lot of the game theory on them, and then I didn't watch too much of the Markiplier playthroughs, but I saw some of the playthroughs.
Okay, but yeah, so you have the people that have either played the games or watched.
I know the lore.
Or you have people that have played the games, or people that have seen others play games that know the lore of these big games that have turned into movies. But then you have the people like myself who know nothing about it and just watch the movie kind of feeling disappointed.
Yeah, I think that's a balance that even with some of the more successful movies that have come out, such as Super Mario Bros., it's definitely a struggle for the studios to figure out, do you want to aim this more at those really huge fans who've been playing these games potentially for decades, or do you want to expand it for new audiences to potentially, get more fans into the games and to bring yourself more revenue? And oftentimes the movies will try and go for both, and it seems to be, at best, it's inconsistent, or it's, oftentimes it'll be safe, but at worst, then you'll have incredibly messy films, or just movies that don't seem to know what they're doing. They manage to spread themselves so thin that they're not pleasing the fans, but then they're not pleasing the general audiences, and then they fail on both fronts. And as I think it's inevitable, we're going to see more and more video game movie adaptations.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's curious to see, will they try and go for one over the other, or will they keep trying to go for doing both? And will some studios find success in that, or are we still going to find a lot of hit and miss results?
I feel like part of the hit and miss doesn't just stem from the fact that they're trying to decide either to please the big fans or the people that aren't fans or know nothing about these games at all, but it's also the choice and format of how they decide to do. You have the film format, which worked for obviously the Sonic movies and Super Mario Bros., but it's kind of not really worked for I don't know, Five Nights at Freddy's or Uncharted. But then you have games that have been adapted into shows. One, for example, like being The Witcher, which currently stands at 3 seasons and 1 spin-off, I believe, which kind of worked, even though it doesn't like adapt a lot of the lore or like is completely accurate to the games. And then also like they're like apparently like the people behind Assassin's Creed have decided to make like an Assassin's Creed show on Netflix, which does seem to work considering the fact that Assassin's Creed game, there's like, 11, 12 of them, a TV format would probably work, all things considered, instead of like trying to do like a Marvel Cinematic Universe, but just for Assassin's Creed.
Anyway, so it's not like, I feel like to make a good video game film, take for example Stalker, right? Okay, we all know Stalker?
No.
Nope.
Just go.
Just go.
You have to treat the film as it is a film. You have to treat it as art and just take inspiration from this video game, from this source material. This goes similar to movies based on books, right?
Yeah.
You take the general tone of it and you take the general plot and you go with it. I feel like that's, in my opinion, how a good video game adaptation film can be made. Treat it like a book.
No, I just remember what I was gonna say. Like with The Witcher, at least.
Mm-hmm.
But like a lot of the better video game and stuff to movies comes from when you have someone who actually cares. Like I know Henry Cavill like cares a lot about The Witcher because he plays the game,
and that's
and
why
like he forced them to like not go too much off. He tried to make sure it stayed lore accurate.
Yeah,
and like that's why it did better because they have a good story, but they're also sticking to the actual like lore of the game.
Yeah, and which is also kind of like one of the reasons he decided to leave. Yeah, I get what you're saying, and like in my case, I never read the Witcher books.
I haven't either.
And I've never played the Witcher games, which to be fair, I should get on. But as someone that's never been connected or like have any knowledge of that lore, I did enjoy like the first like season and a half of The Witcher before I felt like the quality of it kind of stemmed down.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I feel like that's one of the things they like these these video game movies need to get right, is that like you need to figure out like at what point do you stay connected to the lore, but also like get to a point where like a new audience can focus and like stay with and understand the lore.
I
behind
found
the
like
hype.
if you have someone who cares, but especially if you have like the people who made the original like source, like game or book or whatever, and you have those people on board helping with the movies, it tends to be a really good thing. Because you Faye mentioned the books, like turning books into movies, and like I know the One Piece live action. That thing has done really good despite a lot of other live action animes doing really bad, because they have the actual author of the manga who like made the whole thing on board with them the whole time. And like they've made sure that he's like been a big part of making sure they stay accurate and like are doing a good job, and it's done really well because of that.
Okay. Speaking of lore and taking books and video games and other pieces of media and turning them into film, maybe we should talk about Marvel.
Ooh. Well.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I know Peter had an article that he wanted to discuss. So, would you like to?
Yeah, so one part of these discussions we want to be introducing in every kind of podcast, or like at the points in episodes we will have discussions. We do want to try and like stay on like the hype train, I guess, of like surrounding
Being up to date in the media.
Being up to date in the media, exactly. And as of the time we are recording this, the big thing that seems to be stirring in the world of, well, the topic's been stirring around like the subject for a couple of years, but one thing that everyone's talking about is, you can stop doing that, it's distracting. One of the big things that's being discussed about is this article from Variety that just came out. So for those of you that don't know what Variety is, it's kind of like a journal article publisher that discusses that releases journals and articles about like all the new big things surrounding movies and that kind of thing. And this week they released an article concerning the current state of Marvel. And for the first time, at least to my knowledge, it was really negative, all things considered. So I guess before I kind of bring up certain plot points or like the main points of the article, how do we all feel about Marvel in its current state? Arman, I know you had.
Yeah.
You feel really strong about this.
Yeah, because I really liked Marvel all the way till Endgame, and even some of the later okay, whatever. I really liked up to Endgame a lot, and some of the later like TV series have done pretty good. I liked Loki, but it's just been really disappointing to go to the movie theaters over and over, watch a Marvel movie, and it just be underwhelming. It's like it just fits your average movie mark with no hype, no like after like every Marvel movie until like Endgame, I would like watch the post credits and be like super excited to like watch the next movie, and I'd be like I can't wait, watch all these YouTube videos, all this stuff, and then I was like watching these ones after Endgame, and I'm just like, okay, when are you gonna introduce Kang? When is like, and like one of the big problems I have. Well, there's like a lot of problems, but I just really annoying how underwhelming the movies are, and how dependent they've been on TV series is instead of. Because I mean, I like both like Marvel from like my personal opinion, but I also like seeing how other people react to it. And by making so many TV series, it's just harder to see people's reactions because not that many people are gonna watch them. And I don't know, it's been very disappointing after Endgame.
I will definitely say I think especially since Endgame with their phase 4 and phase 5, they very much seem to have gone for quantity over quality. Whereas before Endgame came out, you had anywhere from like two to three movies coming out in a year, and that was it. Whereas now oftentimes you'll have 3 or 4 TV shows and then 3 or 4 movies on top of that, and then it's kind of this constant cycle of this will end, but then this next show will start, and then this movie comes out, and that means there's no time for interest to build up.
Yeah.
Especially when it's completely new characters or
plots that only comic book or like hardcore fans are really gonna know. Right. Unless you explain it properly.
Exactly. It's not giving any time for these ideas to develop, or it's not giving enough focus to any of them. It's very jumbled. And I think that we're starting to reach a point where without major change, it's going to spell like the downfall for the MCU, where if they don't fix these mistakes soon enough and adjust their plans so that people can really get interested in what's going on without having to do a ton of research and watch all this media, I think that Marvel will see a slow but steady decline.
Yeah, and as someone who is, or rather was, really, really into Marvel comics and Marvel comic collecting, and being in, the back of the comic store reading stuff that hasn't been touched in decades, for me, because I followed along with the MCU, the cinematic universe more specifically, in depth, obviously, and that's what got me into the comics to begin with. But my favorite Marvel comic series of all time was Doctor Strange and the Way of the Weird. So I was into comics around the time that Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness was coming out, right?
We all remember that.
Yeah.
We all remember that flaming hot mess.
And I noticed a lot of the art direction in that movie was very, very, very similar to the art by Chris Bachalo in Doctor Strange in the Way of the Weird, that comic series. And they didn't credit him at all. And I was really disturbed. So I went to his Instagram, and he was talking, he was ranting about, I saw so much of my art, so much inspiration from my art and my ideas being taken in that film, and yet they didn't credit me whatsoever. So that's kind of when I was like, never mind. I'm going to stick with my comics, because I can't, that kind of stuff is such a pet peeve for me. And it's also just horribly disrespectful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was some of the things that the article did kind of mention. Not really what Faya just touched on, but...
Check out Chris Bachalo's art. He's a genius.
All right. Well, as I did mention, there are a couple points in this article, not just from the movies that have recently come out standpoint, but also like what's been going on behind the scenes. And I guess I'll just open up with one of the things, or like one of the big things that the article did touch on, was Jonathan Majors and his state as Kang the Conqueror, who is supposedly to be Marvel's next Thanos, I guess. And one of the big things they've talked about is how, for those of you that don't know, Jonathan Majors is currently in the middle of a legal battle with someone who claims that he had an unconsensual time with, I guess. Relationship with, and now obviously I haven't been following too closely, but what I do understand is that Majors obviously has been claiming that he is innocent, and a lot of reports have credited that he is telling the truth on that. But this has kind of put Marvel like in a state of panic, with one being he is supposedly the next big villain for Marvel. But not only does it discuss like, you know, his current legal case, but primarily how people have responded to Kang as a character.
Because I remember watching Loki when they first introduced Kang, like watching that last episode and then introducing all this stuff. And I was so hyped because I was like, okay, here's this new big bad. They just person making sure the multiverse, like, okay.
No, your language. Continue.
Okay. They they got rid of Kang, the one who was controlling the making sure only one multiverse, and like they opened up the branches for like all these different Kangs to come out, and I was like so hyped and excited. But first of all, I already realized not many people were, because not many people care about the TV series. They don't care about like Loki because no one's watching the TV series. They're watching the movies. And, like a lot of people do watch the series, but, like, a lot of people don't watch the TV series they have. So, already, Kang wasn't introduced well because, so many fans knew about him, but most people didn't really understand it. And then they took, 1,200 years trying to develop how a multiverse works through, all their movies. They explain how the multiverse concept works. And they introduced Kang in, such an odd way where I feel like they just fumbled. Like Thanos, they had cool post-credit scenes slowly building up to him, showing who he was, establishing a sense of power. They didn't really do that with Kang well.
Granted, in the comics, it's kind of similar with Kang, but I digress. Continue.
I agree with everything that Amaran said, because let's take a look at the way, primarily how Kang was introduced. Obviously, like you said, Kang was first introduced via Jonathan Majors in the finale of Loki season 1, and obviously in that episode you don't really get the big bad vibes from him. I mean,
he's a cool collected.
He's a cool calm type of guy. But then obviously because they know not everyone's going to be watching the shows, they introduced him as the main villain for Ant-Man 3.
Ant-Man and the Wasp,
And I feel like the problem with that, obviously, I'm not sure how much everybody cares, but obviously Kang gets his ass whooped by Ant-Man, and I feel like the problem with that is let's compare him to Thanos real quick. Like you said, Thanos was introduced in post-credit scenes and I don't know, a few other moments in movies like Guardians of the Galaxy, that kind of thing. But obviously, he was only established through a bit of a physical presence.
Yeah.
But obviously that keeps the audience intrigued because, for some people that haven't read the comics, you get the sense that he's a big bad. And then when we see him for, the first, big moment in Infinity War,
he just killed off.
He killed pretty much he kicked their ass in the first, in his, first
intro scene.
And not only that, but him as, in the first
he beats the Hulk instantly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but not only that, he whips their asses in the for the first time he's in a movie for the full length.
Yeah.
And then when you compare that to Kang, right? Kang gets his ass kicked by Ant-Man. And I feel like that doesn't establish him as a big villain, because if obviously they try to build off the threat. There's multiple versions of him.
They go off how Kang was which I have killed millions of Avengers in my like countless. Like he goes off on this stuff. I have two problems. First of all, they gave too satisfying of an ending for Ant-Man 3. Like okay. You gotta start up
15 minutes.
Okay. It's
Technical issues. It's what we live for.
Man, so in like Ant-Man 3, right? Sure, you want to get rid of that Kang, right? He's scary. You want to get rid of him? Sure, get rid of him. Why did they both manage to go back? They get stuck there for 5 seconds, and instantly the portal opens up. They can go back to their size, and it just annoyed me that they gave such a happily ever after ending after beating one of Kang, and I feel like that just like even if they beat him, that's fine because the point is that there's infinites of him. How are you gonna just let them get away with everything?
Well, I don't think it's just that. I think it's also the point that, like, if you're trying to establish Kang as like, Jonathan Majors as the next big bad, which, from what I've seen, he can play a villain. Like, he played the antagonist in Creed 3, the most recent movie in, like, the Rocky Creed saga, and he was terrifying as a boxer. So and as not only that, but as a character. So if you can put him in a character like, yes, he's really good at acting. So if you put him in a villain role, you can make him terrifying. But I feel like now Kang's just kind of a joke because, yes, you're trying to establish there's multiples of him. He can't be defeated.
To be fair, he's supposed to be weaker than Thanos.
True, but if he can get his ass kicked by Ant-Man pretty easily, like, then the Avengers should have no problem. And like, okay, if he shows up every few months, don't worry. It's like what Miles said about the Spy. He's just a weak, like, villain of the week.
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying, like, if they had just not given the happily ever after to Ant-Man, if at the very least someone doesn't make it, someone is stuck there, they do something. There has to be some sacrifice. You can't just defeat the villain without any real, like, long-term sacrifice. They got their cake and ate it too, and that's just not establishing a scary villain. And
this wasn't mentioned in the girl, but I feel like they did the same with that with Kingpin from the Hawkeye series. And
I didn't watch that, but
but basically when I saw that Vincent D'Onofrio, who plays Kingpin, not just in Hawkeye, but he also played Kingpin in all 3 seasons of the Netflix Daredevil show. You watch the Netflix show, he is terrifying. Like, the first time you see him kill somebody is by bashing someone's head in with a car door. And that is terrifying to think about. And when you see him, he doesn't just do terrifying things. Like, when you see him in the show, like, he's terrifying.
He's an intimidating presence.
Yeah, like, he's the kind of guy where if you say the bad, like, something, like, slightly negative about him, he could kill somebody that you love, right?
Yeah.
And then, so when I saw him in Hawkeye, I was like, oh, like, things just got serious. But then, he gets his ass kicked by, like, Hawkeye and his little sidekick. And then, like, watching, I was like, okay, well, I mean, he's gotten his ass kicked by Daredevil, so it's no surprise he struggles to go toe-to-toe with Hawkeye.
Well,
but basically what I thought, and then towards the end of, like, at the end of the episode, it's like you said, like, happily ever after, Hawkeye and Kate go home to spend Christmas with his family. And when I saw that, I was thinking to myself, oh, wait, but they just messed with Kingpin. The next thing I was expecting is they're going to walk in the door and find, like, I'm sorry this is dark, but I was half expecting, like, oh, they're going to walk in and Hawkeye's family is just going to be murdered. And we all and then that would establish Kingpin as, like, a terrifying villain. Mm-hmm. So when I saw that, I was just like, this is not the same Kingpin as we saw in the Daredevil show. This is just goofy Kingpin.
Yeah, and I guess this can also lead into our overarching idea of there being such inconsistencies between the TV shows and the movies, and the tone is not the same. For example, like in Hawkeye, it was almost childlike. The TV series is very appealing to all audiences. It's almost like rated G in a sense. Yeah. And I can understand having to add my 2 cents as a comic collector. In like the more modern Hawkeye comics, it is very millennial humor, like Doggo Pupper type, like it is very appealing to everyone per se. But still, it's, I don't know. It was unsatisfying.
I was just thinking about this. I think, to be fair, a lot of the Marvel movies before Infinity War were relatively lighthearted. And, like, you had some scary stuff, some sacrifice, but in the end it was mostly positive. But with Infinity War and Endgame being so much darker and serious, it kind of set a expectation of tone shift. Not completely away from the comedy. I think, if anything, Guardians of the Galaxy shows that you can keep the comedy while being dark and scared and sad and be a good film. But I think there's, like, an expectation of more of that. Like, Thor, Love and Thunder.
Holy shit.
like
Christian
that
Bale
one-
playing Gore the God Butcher.
And they fumbled it. How do you fumble? Like you have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and Thor, Love and Thunder. 2 movies, both about comedy and darkness at the same time. And one just flops so bad.
Especially
And it
with,
had
like...
such potential too.
It
You
had
gotta-
so much.
oh my god.
They also introduced their first, like, unique Marvel movie character. That daughter, Gore's daughter, that's not a character in the comics.
That's just something they
They
added.
made that up themselves. They
I
had
didn't
their-
know that.
Yeah,
I
watched-
didn't know that either.
I watched some videos and they were saying, like, it's literally their own character that's in none of the comics, no previous thing, and they have so much potential making their own thing finally. And they just fumble.
Yeah. Well, moving things along, I want to go to a point that Fair said, that there are inconsistencies within it, but it's not just, like, when it comes to, like, the half-baked scripts or like the characters. I guess there's a lot of things that the article points out from behind the scenes that are also causing issues. One of which being obviously that Marvel is kind of bleeding money, and one of the points and this was supported, and I quote, with a single episode of She-Hulk costing some $25 million and this is per episode. And to give you context, that is the article points out that is dwarfing the budget of a final season episode from HBO's Game of Thrones. Wow. And that is also way more than the budget for the first John Wick movie.
Jesus.
So a single episode costed way more than John Wick or, like, almost the entire, like, season, like, an entire episode of Game of Thrones.
And the season finale, which is their, like, biggest.
I've never
Yeah.
seen Game of Thrones.
Same, but, like,
Same.
you know. a
Wait,
bit
has anybody
disappointing.
here seen Game of Thrones?
I have.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but
I haven't even seen the Marvel movies just because it would be too much to catch up on.
Yeah, it's
Well,
fair.
And that's the
She-Hulk-
other thing. It gets overwhelming when you have that
inaccessible.
much stuff.
It's
Because then it's like,
Yeah.
Exactly.
I wanted to see Endgame, honestly, but I knew that I'd have to watch, like,
Everything.
6+ hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it gets a lot. And
Yeah.
now they're making it even more with so many series. And, like when you have, like, Marvels, right? Like,
another point we're gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah, we might as well just bring it up now.
it's like when you have the Marvels, her name's Kamala Khan, right?
Yeah.
That's- Has she been introduced in the movies at all?
No.
She's only in the TV series.
She only had
Which
her.
is problematic because now you're gonna start an entire plot line, an entire, like, movie around something that most people haven't even seen because it's a small TV series, and you're developing off of that.
And what's important is that I think her name is Monica Rambeau.
From
Also,
WandaVision,
is
yeah.
only from one of the shows. So that's
Yeah.
2 of the
Like-
3
like-
main characters, only from the TV shows. And Captain Marvel
is being sidelined by, like,
yeah.
2 characters that are
That
being
no one
introduced. No one knows about.
Right.
You can't just, like, you can have your TV series and your movies and have them have connections, but you can't make an entire movie off the back of like a TV series, because this is literally going off because there's 2 seasons of Miss Marvel, right?
No, there's only
The
one.
Yeah, I think
Every
that's
show except for Loki only has
Sorry,
one
yeah,
season.
So and then the final episode, that's when her and Captain Marvel switch places.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're going off of that plot line. But that plot line is unknown to most people because they have no clue who she is. And that's just
Yeah.
like
Yeah, and it's another one of those points of. I'm sorry. What are you gonna? Did you want to?
I was just gonna say, granted, they're Miss Marvel comics. You can't go into a comic store these days without seeing them, like, on the front shelves. So there would be some familiarity
Well,
to those who are
no.
casual comic enjoyers.
not for
no,
yeah.
just saying,
Yeah, I know.
just adding,
I'm
just
not talking
adding.
about comics, so I'm saying, like,
No, I
people
understand.
going to
I
the
fully
movies
understand.
without knowing the TV people who don't watch the TV series and only watch the movies up until now have been able to just watch the movies and be able to follow it relatively. Like, you can watch, if you watch all the Marvel movies and don't watch a single TV series, you're probably going to be fine. Like, you're going to know the general plot. But now with Miss Marvel, I don't know how they're going to do it, but, like, that's a show that you kind of need to see
in order to
the TV series, in order to actually know what character is being the main character.
And that was something that, and that was obviously one of the things the article also pointed out, how the Marvels is expected to flop, like, unsurprisingly, but not just because of, you know, the fact that there's a lot of there's a whole chunk of the fan base that doesn't like Brie Larson, and then there's also the fact that, like, Miss Marvel herself is actually being sidelined by two characters that no one's ever heard of.
Yeah.
And then they also talked about how Neil DaCosta, the director behind Captain Marvel 1 and 2, how she actually left 4 months during the last 4 months of production to go focus on another movie that she was working on. And one of the points that, and this was something I wanted to point out, so going back on Captain Marvel's being sidelined by two other characters that no one's heard about. It's becoming a common trend with a lot of the projects that are coming out, like, in the future. One of those being the upcoming Blade reboot. And for those of you who don't know, Blade's like a half vampire, half human vampire hunter. He Wesley Snipes starred as Blade in the first 3 Blade movies that came out around, like, before the Tobey Maguire Spider movies came out. And apparently the article points out that so one thing they talk about was Mahershala Ali. For those of you who don't know, is like a 2-time Oscar nominee, and I think he won an Oscar at one point. I don't remember. But basically, he was revealed to play Blade at the 2022-2023 Marvel Comic-Con.
Not Wesley? Not Wesley?
No.
I didn't know that. Okay.
They wouldn't bring him back because he didn't want to be in them anymore. Like, after the second movie, he didn't want to be in them anymore. But basically, the article points out that Mahershala Ali signed on for the Epinon. I don't know how to say that. He signed up for the role of the vampire. Things look promising for a 2023 release date, but the project has gone through at least 5 writers, 2 directors. And 1 shut down 6 weeks before production. One person familiar with the script says that the story at one point morphed into a narrative led by women and filled with life lessons. Well, Blade was relegated to the 4th lead, with the movie potentially focusing on his daughter and not the headlining character himself, which caused Mahershala Ali to nearly leave the project as a whole, and which has now caused Feige to go back to the drawing board, and hired Michael Green, who was the Oscar-nominated writer behind Logan.
Okay.
And not only that, the movie is now being delayed from 2023 to 2025.
That's good.
With a budget, of less than $100 million. Wow. Which is big because obviously, it's kind of becoming a common thread that, like, the leading characters in certain films are, like, being sidelined for other characters. But I feel like that's a problem when the movie is named after, like, one character who's being sidelined by other characters. Like, if you look at Star Wars, if you look at the Star Wars sequels, the movies aren't called, like, Star Wars Luke Skywalker's Return for Episode 8. If you were to give that title, people would be mad because the movie still focuses on Rey, but it's not. It's just Star Wars, and the title doesn't pertain to a certain character. But if you're gonna have, like, the Marvels and Blade and not have them focus on the characters that are meant to be the leads of this film, you're already gonna lose interest of, like, so many fans, and it's gonna cause just more problems and give people more reasons not to go watch it.
Yeah, no, it's because to be fair, Marvel's because Kamala Khan, like, her whole thing is that she's, like, the biggest fan of Miss Marvel, and, like, she gets superpowers and now she wants to be like Miss Marvel, but it's just one side note, which Actually, I'm not gonna bring that up. Whatever. You guys can talk about something.
All right. Well, on that note, we are running low on time, so I guess we might as well wrap it up. So
I like not in the camera half the time.
So yeah, we'll pick it up next week. We definitely went on a lot of a rant about Marvel and the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. There were a ton of other things that we had planned, but we didn't quite get to. So next week, hopefully, we will have everything a lot more organized. We will also most likely see some activities and/or film-related games to hopefully look forward to. Maybe some guests.
Who weren't here today.
Maybe Nolan number 2 will be able to show up for once. We'll cut it out. We'll cut the whole thing except for the good parts, which is going to be like 5 minutes long.
And
but
we're
that's
including
fine.
this.
We're including all of this.
Okay.
Yes, this entire rant.
Yeah.
Anyways, we will see you next week. Bye-bye.
All right.
Some slogan or the other that means something.